In a disastrous phone interview with MAGA Newsmax host Todd Starnes, Donald Trump is even more explicit and more unhinged about his desperate and authoritarian scheme to rig elections to permanently lock the Democratic Party out of power. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, brace yourselves. Here is Trump on Todd Starnes' show.
Well, the biggest thing we can do, it's bigger even than the reapportionment. It's bigger than anything we can do as a party. Our elections are extremely corrupt. The mail-in ballots, the system is so corrupt. You know, Colorado went to it. You don't even go to a state that does it because when they go mail-in, the Democrats, the only way they're going to win is mail-in ballots. That's the only way. I say we'd pick up 100 seats if you had real elections, meaning you go to the voters. I think I would have won California. I think I'd win California right now over that terrible governor. I mean, he is such a pathetic guy, one of the worst. Although Pritzker's pretty bad, too, I would say he's pretty pathetic. But the mail-in ballots and the mail-in voting, and then you put them together with the machines, and you have to, that's why I said, make it too big to rig. The last election, the biggest thing.
So, again, that was Donald Trump on a phone interview with Todd Starnes of Newsmax. And there's so much unpacked there. Number one, again, the delusion. Trump is trying to persuade himself and the Newsmax audience that he's very popular in California, that I'd have 50 states, all 50 states, literally everybody loves me, nobody hates me, everybody loves me because I'm amazing, I'm the best. I mean, I want you to think about the level of delusion that this man has, number one. Number two, listen to the specific phrases that he uses. He thinks that the reason he's going after mail-in ballots, he says it right there, is because Democrats, in his mind, Democrats can't win without mail-in ballots. Ergo, mail-in ballots are corrupt. Ergo, mail-in ballots must be prohibited by either executive order or full force of law. It's like a child's understanding of the world. Oh, well, I don't like you, so you suck, so everything you do is bad, and that means everything you do is illegal. And, if you like red, well, then red is illegal. It's only blue. Like, that's how his mind works. That's just how his mind works. And he's so explicit about it. Doesn't even try to hide it. Could be a function of his cognitive decline. Could be because he feels he's so entrenched in power, he doesn't really have to come up with, well-constructed, internally consistent lies. We discussed in a previous video that election experts are pointing out that this could backfire on Trump if he were to get his way, because prior to COVID, Republicans utilized mail-in ballots more than Democrats and made better use of them. And to the extent that has flipped in the post-COVID world, a huge part of that is because Donald Trump has waged war on mail-in ballots. He tells his followers every fucking time that they're unreliable and they're corrupt, so don't use them. And when he told his followers during the last election, actually, no, go out and vote by mail, the participation started to equalize again. And that's why I'm saying, you would think I'd be like, oh, fine, screw it. Okay, get rid of mail-in ballots because that would disproportionately hurt your voters. I don't want that. I want it to be so easy for Republicans and Democrats to be able to vote. And the reason, as I've said before, because Democrats believe we can at least be competitive in maximal turnout elections. If you're a Republican and you're watching, my party believes we can still, not that we will, but we can still beat you in an election if as many of you turn out to vote as possible, as long as many of us get to turn out to vote as possible too. Make it as easy and effortless for the greatest number of people in this country, no matter what their political affiliation is. Trump doesn't feel that way. You heard him say it. He thinks Democrats can only win with mail-in ballots. Therefore, mail-in ballots are corrupt or illegitimate and must be prohibited. It's so bad that even the conservative National Review condemned Trump by their editorial board. Presidents don't run our elections, condemning him for his call to just ban voting machines and mail-in ballots, debunking, going in vivid detail about how this is unconstitutional, how this is motivated by conspiracy theory, just debunking the claim that the United States is the only country to do mail-in voting. It's just not true. They go into vivid detail. When you lose the National Review, which is even more right-wing than the Wall Street Journal, you've really screwed up. But I actually want to refer to a CNN article, and I'll tell you why, because they make the case that Trump's threats against mail-in voting are deeply sinister, not just wrong, sinister. So, Donald Trump has often shown how far he'll go to try to flout the will of voters. That's what makes his new renewed obsession with mail-in ballots so sinister. Trump falsely claimed in a Truth Social post that voting by mail is a scam that allows Democrats to cheat. He promised an executive order to also target another safe election tool, voting machines, and inaccurately claimed he had the authority to dictate how elections are run before the 2026 midterms. Incredibly, he appears to have been partly acting on the advice of Russian President Vladimir Putin, an authoritarian who destroyed Russia's post-Soviet Union democracy and who interfered in the 2016 election that Trump won. Trump's fixation on mail-in voting is not new. His suspicion was sent into overdrive after he lost the presidency in 2020 in an election that saw an expansion of mail-in ballots to help keep voters safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump sensed the danger to his hopes of a second consecutive term from a high turnout as early as the second quarter of 2020. He falsely claimed in interviews and social media that foreign states could interfere in mail-in voting and that postal balloting would allow fraud. In June of that year, he predicted election disaster of our time and a rigged election on Twitter. At that time, his warnings were seen as an odd quirk and were not supported by many senior Republicans. They also frustrated GOP strategists who were urging their voters to use mail-in ballots during the health emergency, especially since Democratic voters were traditionally more likely to use postal voting. But in retrospect, following the experience of Trump's refusal to accept the results of the 2020 election, and I should say this last part, again, I've seen data to the contrary that actually it was Republicans who were more likely to use mail-in ballots. But again, that could be like distinctions, like maybe mail-in ballots that they turn in instead of actually sending in mail. I have no idea where they get that particular thing from. What I know is like absentee ballots and non-in-person voting mechanisms have been traditionally better used by Republicans, which is why so many Republicans were pissed, at least initially, when Trump ran his mouth about this. But in retrospect, and following the experience of Trump's refusal to accept the result of the 2020 election, his comments look more alarming. They are heralded a historic attempt to overturn the result of a free and fair presidential election. And they mean his newest remarks on the topic should be taken seriously. Taken together with more recent attempts to sway future elections, they raise alarm bells about the midterms in the next presidential election. Since Trump lacks the constitutional power to dictate election rules in the states, he may be also laying the groundwork to claim a Republican loss in the midterm elections. Often a rite of passage for incumbent presidents is illegitimate. Trump is again using his position to undermine elections. Since returning to power, Trump has escalated his attempts to use executive power and the visibility of the office to tilt the midterms towards Republicans and to undermine democracy more generally. Trump ordered Texas Republicans to initiate an unprecedented midterm redistricting drive to net 5 new GOP seats by 2026, which could be critical given the current tiny Republican House majority. The move set off similar move by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom to draw new Democratic seats in California, which may trigger a nationwide partisan redistricting wave that could further damage democracy. Trump has also rewarded those who did his dirty work in attacking elections, granting pardons and commutations to support those who were convicted and jailed for the assault on the Capitol on January 6 in an attempt to overturn President Biden's election win the previous election. Trump supporters have shown a similar disregard for the right of voters in each state to choose their leaders, even those who fiercely resisted federal power in previous capacities. In June, Homeland Security Secretary and former South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem explained the deployment of National Guard troops and active-duty U.S. Marines to Los Angeles amid protests against Trump's immigration policies. She said they plan to stay to, quote, liberate the city from the socialist and burdensome leadership of its Democratic representatives. In the event, the soldiers did nothing of the sort and mostly just guarded federal properties, but the deployments and her rhetoric were in keeping with Trump's authoritarian turn. More recently, Trump has sent military reservists and federal agents into the streets of Washington, D.C. as part of an anti-crime crackdown. He's now importing National Guard members from Republican states in a show of force over a city that has repeatedly and overwhelmingly voted to reject him in national elections. There are concerns this could be a template he will later apply to Democratic cities in the states. With all this in mind, the possibility of an attempt by Trump to block or delegitimize the rights of state, including those that return mostly Democratic delegations to run their own elections, must be taken seriously. And it mentions Vladimir Putin's role in influencing Trump. Still, Trump's capacity to do more than try to discredit mail-in voting is questionable. There's no official role for presidents in administering federal elections, a point driven home in several of the criminal indictments he faced for his role in seeking to overturn the 2020 election. The Constitution states that the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. It does allow Congress to, at any time, alter regulations on the times and manner of elections. That is one potential route for Republicans to change state election laws. But since they lack 60 votes for the Senate, they'd have to outlaw the filibuster to do so, an unlikely scenario since this could open the way to untamed Democratic power the next time their rivals control the chamber, if they control the chamber. Still, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt signaled Tuesday that Trump intended to go beyond the executive order. We did a video about that. Multiple studies by academic institutions, think tank, and vote protection organizations have shown that mail-in voting is secure. CNN's Daniel Dale produced a comprehensive new fact check debunking Trump's claims that Democrats use mail-in voting to cheat and that the states, quote, must do what the federal government and Trump tell them to do. The latter claim, incidentally, is a fundamental misunderstanding of the character of a federal republic. Dale notes in the U.S. elections, quote, there has generally been a tiny quantity of ballot fraud representing a minuscule percentage of votes cast. Any attempt by Trump to change voting methods by executive fiat would immediately trigger court challenges. And it's not clear that the Republican-led state legislatures would all fall into line, since Republicans have been catching up to Democrats in the share of early voting in person and by mail. Democrats are already signaling they will resist Trump's latest salvo against mail-in voting as a rallying call, and it goes to refers to Arizona's Democratic Secretary of State. It refers to Katie Porter, former Democratic Congresswoman who's running for California governor. But yeah, this is where we are, and it also goes into details about how Trump joked about suspending the 2028 election, which I don't find particularly funny, and I don't think we should just automatically write off as a joke. But there you have it. He's increasingly delusional, increasingly deranged, and making it very explicit that the goal is simply to use, by any means necessary, to create a situation where he can lock the Democratic Party out of power unlawfully, unconstitutionally, authoritarianly for decades. There we are. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.